Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another video on the Tone Master Pro. So in this one, I'm just going to raise a bit of awareness about it. This is the bad boy. And let's get one thing straight, all modelers are really good. End of, we had Roland Cubes come out 30 years ago and they come out with basically like a stock tone knob which you turn into the amp settings, and they were great. You could just turn to the amp you wanted, a tweed, Marshall, a high gain Messer, and they weren't amazing, but they were good enough, and that was like 30 years ago. So now you look at the modelers around today, they're just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I didn't delve into owning a modeler for a while. I waited a few years, tried all the big boys, quads, the fractal, helix, all like that. And I just didn't know what to get because they were all amazing. They all sounded amazing. I've never been shy of getting stuck into effects processors and learning how to work them. And I've always been from a sort of Digitech vibe in the 90s. I had all the RP series, right from the RP1, that was one of my first boards. And an interesting tale, my dad took me to buy that. I was about 16, he took me to buy Digitech RP1. And we pulled up at this studio in Warrington, and the guy who was selling it, we go into this really lush studio, and he had two Marshall 4x12s with a plexi head and like a 60s SG, and he plugged it into a Digitech RP1 and went, try it out. So it was going to sound amazing regardless, but anyway, that was one of my first effects boards and it was really good. But back in them days, you couldn't be scared of menus or anything like that. And it's the same with a few of these modelers today, they're just really complex. And I think that's part of why I've not fired the bullet and bought them. So the interface is where Fender have really nailed it with this. They've absolutely nailed it. And I think that is the reason why it will go on to be the dominant modeler for the next 15 years. I really do. I think we'll talk a lot more about the interface, but one of the biggest strengths of the Tone Master Pro is the amps feel like real amps. The effects feel like real effects. As I mentioned, I done like tests against all my equipment when I got it, and it was bang on. I don't know how they've done it. It is absolutely bang on. So I noticed where all the modelling went wrong for me was, and this isn't for the big boys these days, this is for all the katanas, the cubes, the black stars, all that type of modelling, the line 6. They take like a sort of snapshot of the sound, which was great, you'd be playing, it'd be great. But as soon as you would try and alter the tone or the volume, especially on your guitar, it would lose all the properties. And that's what it always let down. And I'm a big volume and tone player, especially the last few years, and I really notice it. So that's something I was worried about with the big modelers, but this is so responsive, you don't have none of that. I try and plagiarise Jeff Beck very badly, and all the other greats, they all roll for volume and tones, and this allows me to do that. I have no problem. I roll the volume back, keep my volume, take the gain away, crystal clean. You might notice in all my videos I often roll the bridge pickup tone down to 7 or 8. On nearly everything I do, and this is perfect for that. It handles it so well. One of the other points as well, one of the other great points as well about the Tone Master Pro is the access to all the boutique amps and pedals and rare circuits and just rare equipment that we wouldn't get access to, you know what I mean? Especially some of the Fenders and Marshalls, they just sound absolutely gorgeous. And we just can't afford to get into that market, to go and buy vintage Marshalls or Fenders, it ain't happening. And I've got a few, don't get me wrong, but my ideal setup that I want, I haven't got it. Joe Bonamass's got it, and he's got all 10 of them actually. So the Tone Master Pro is great for giving us access to all these rare boutique amps. I got offered two really vintage Marshalls, one was a plexi, and I think one was the model after it where they started using the metal fronts. Basically, a good friend of mine, a bassist, rang me up, said he had a friend of a friend who was looking to retire and sell his gear, and he had these two battered down Marshall heads that he wanted buttons for, literally £100. So we went and picked them up, got them home, realised what we had. They had two cabs as well with them, and they were worth thousands. So we rang them up and told them, we said, you don't know what you've got here. So my bassist friend Carly took them and got them reserviced, revalved, and then got them sold for what they were worth for the guy and sorted them out. But if I wanted them two heads, I would have had to pay £5,000 for the pair, easy. £5,000 for the pair. And I like to have either a Fender sound and a Marshall sound. I like the both of them playing off the both. And I've never ever took two amps to a gig like that. I've always just took a Fender amp with, say, a cube in the boot as a backup in case the valves go. For a few years I used the Riviera Pubster, which channel 1's a Fender and channel 2's a Marshall, and that was brilliant. But I went to watch Aynsley Lister recently, and he's living the dream. He's taken a Fender valve and a Marshall valve. In fact, I think he doesn't use the Marshall. I think he's got his own signature amp for that now. But effectively, he's got two different valve amps live with him, and then his board, and his sound is amazing. Like, but a lot of the fellas I'd ask at the gig, because I owned a Tonemaster Pro at this point, and I was in a blues band, and I was worried about going onto the blues scene without a vintage valve amp, because you know what some of them are like. And I was worried to get ragged to bits for using a TMP, and it wasn't the case. A lot of these blues fellas would often say, no, the valve amps are great, but you know, they're often a bit hi-fi or weird pings, and I don't know whether they're talking out the backside or what, but it seems refreshing that they weren't insisting, oh, you use all this equipment. And then recently I played the Merseyside Guitar Show, somehow fluked the headline spot on the Merseyside Guitar Show, and I had my Tonemaster, of course, and because of the way the room was really big and long and narrow, I just took a Roland Cube for my stage sound and just had it turned towards the drummer, the bassist and the singer, so we could hear it on stage. But I basically ran two stereo out of this into front of house, and it sounded unbelievable. You know, all the other artists were coming up and saying, wow, that just sounds like a valve amp, it's mind blowing. They were looking on the stage for my valve amp and they couldn't see it. They were just blown away. I was the only person there, the only artist using Fender, which was surprising, because it was a guitar show. They had thousands of guitars for sale. I'd say like 80% of the guitars there at the show were Fenders. So for Fender not to have people there, you know, flying the flag for Fender was a bit surprising. But anyway, at the end of my set, I got a crowd of fellas coming over, what's that you're using, Tonemaster Pro, and I basically sat there for half an hour demoing the interface, and that was it. The interface sold it. They were like, wow, that's amazing. You know, they'd all heard the sound. They were all convinced I was using a Deluxe reverb, a proper old school Deluxe reverb, and they come and I had a Deluxe reverb on the preset. That's my main preset. Jago's Deluxe gig rig. It's on the cloud. Go get it. And yeah, so they were all just amazed by the Tonemaster Pro. So anyway, it gives us access to all these amazing sounds that we wouldn't usually have. You know, boutique pedals and all like that. And that's one of the biggest points of the Tonemaster Pro. You know, by giving us access to these sounds, we can explore them without cost or guilt or compromise. You know what I mean? I've always wanted to play a clone. I've never been able to. I've always played Behringer clones or stuff like that. And if you ever watch the Andertons video where they have a real old school clone and then the Behringer, I think they might have a modeler or something like that. They all sound the same. There's no difference. No difference whatsoever. So the thing with the Tonemaster Pro is you don't ask, is that worth buying that effect? Because you have it. You have it in this. So you just load it in and you start playing it. And because that barrier is gone, you explore the pedal and you find out so many cool things about that individual pedal that you would never have even looked at. You never purchased the pedal. You know, the overdrives, I was just pure SD1 tube screamer, that's all I need. But when you explore the overdrives on this, you're like, wow. And then you find out they're based on actual pedals and on the Zen overdrive, then the master in this update. Oh, Christmas has come early. I'm so happy with that. So I've got all the overdrives I need now. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So now let's go on to the interface, and this is where I think Fender have really nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. This is what will make this the dominant model, I'm telling you. Because don't get me wrong, all the quads and the fractals and all like that, they're amazing, outstanding. But a lot of people champion them are world-class virtuoso players, and 99% of guitarists aren't. You know, a lot of us are just people chasing the passion, intermediate players, beginners, and this interface will just open so many doors to people like that. So the interface is just amazing. You know, these tuner knobs are just unbelievable, and the first time you load an amp on the screen and then you start turning the knobs and you see the dials turn, it's just like, wow, this is just amazing. And there's so many things like that hidden in it, which just for me makes it the best interface out there. I see a lot of similarities between Steve Jobs and the iPhone, and I think Fender have used a lot of psychology when planning this unit in the research and design. I'll give you a few examples. You know, the psychology they've used, they've purposefully put the layout to reduce cognitive load and just make the whole process easier, allowing us to just go into flow and focus on music. You know, the way they've designed the whole layout, it's to reduce mental friction and cognitive load, and the layout, it's like spacious and linear, and it just seems right. It doesn't feel like a computer. You know, you're dropping the blocks, the pedals or amps. I didn't know what blocks were for months, and then I realised it's just the square block that either has the amp or the pedal in. But you basically just drop them in like Lego. It's amazing. Like, I sit there in work and someone will be talking to me about something, and I'll just be there dreaming about what preset I'm going to make that night. Oh, I'm going to drop in a messer. Oh, I wonder what a messer sounds like with this and that, and it's just amazing, you know. So that whole interface, I wouldn't think like that. I never thought like that with Digitech. I never thought like that with Boss, and it's just making me approach the whole technology side totally different as a musician. It takes out all the stress and just allows me to play. You know, so is this technology groundbreaking? No, it's not. But the interface is, without a shadow of a doubt, the interface is groundbreaking, and it's exactly the same as what happened with the iPhone. You know, Steve Jobs didn't invent like internet phones and touch screens and MP3 players. He just changed the way humans interact with all of them through his interface. You know, he done this specifically by creating visual metaphors and reducing cognitive load and allowing the user direct manipulation. And Fender have done exactly the same. You know, if you look at the visual metaphors, it's the blocks, it's the pedals, they've dropped them all in, we can visually see what we create. You know, the signal change is linear and logical, our brains just understand it, we don't have to think. You know, they've reduced the cognitive load so much. Other modelers ask you to remember concepts and trees and all these weird algorithms, and you know, even like the way they name some of the effects. I can't even remember what effects I'm selecting in all of them. But Fender have took all that out of it. They've just created a brilliant, classic, human integrated design. As for the direct manipulation, you know, we're not thinking about parameters like I mentioned with all the old Digitechs or decibels or, you know, colours or anything like that. They've made it dead visual. We see it, we drag, we drop, direct manipulation, and it just takes out all the mental load and just allows us to focus on the play. You know, by doing this, you stop thinking about the system and just focus on playing. And it was the same with what Steve Jobs done with the iPhone and the iPad. It's all about the system and allowing you just to go straight to the task. And I think that's why the Fender modeler will become the dominant one, unless all the big boys copy this interface with their own version, which, you know, I'll be very surprised if they don't. I've been reading a lot about the future of modelers over the next 20 years, and I think in 20 years time it's going to get really interesting. AI will be involved, you know. We can talk to our computers now and ask it to do anything. We can talk to it and ask it to build us apps and everything. So it won't be long until we're talking to these bad boys saying, create this preset for me, and it will go away. You know, end of. So from what I gather online, I think Euro DSP are the leaders in that. So they'll go into that market a step ahead of everyone else. But until that happens, you know, 10, 15, 20 years, whenever, I think Fender have smashed it out of the park. And this will only get better. One of the other reasons why I love it is the updates. It's bonkers how I didn't see this and then got my first update. I was like, oh, this is amazing. If I would have went out and bought all the stuff on this update today, I would have spent thousands. So, and then now every update, for me, every update gets better. And the last one with them 4 amps, the diesel amp, you're talking 3 or 4 grand to get one of them. Each of them 4 amps, you're talking thousands. And then you've got the effects. We've just been given like £15,000 worth of equipment there in one update, all for free, and we're going to get the same every 6 months. You know, Fender have been releasing these updates like clockwork every spring and fall. It's usually just before Christmas and usually April, May, and they're amazing. So that's another reason why the Fender got ragged by everyone when this came out. They said, oh, the rubbish at community. I've never found that. I've always found they were brilliant at working with their own community, and they've not let us down with this. They've been really consistent, and the updates are just phenomenal. So guys, that's me video on why I think you should all get one. Don't forget the TMP. It's not about replacing amps or pedals. It's not about that. It's about removing the barriers to sound and ideas, and by removing these barriers and giving us access to all these tonal palettes, it's just going to feed back into our own creative art and improve our ability to reach our potential. And so if you care more about playing and writing than tweaking, this is for you. Go get to a guitar store and play it out, or just take my word for it. Get online to Fender now, order one. You will not be disappointed.